that's for the sort of writing parts. And then we'll have an interview. They get to interview each other, they get to film each other, they get to sort of look up common questions and find answers to them. And we'll actually have this mock interview so far along that they have to dress up, they have to produce their materials for the interviewers. They are interviewed together with someone else, so the interviewers will have to choose which of the 2 or 3 applicants they would have chosen for the hypothetical work. Then we'll review the tapes. First 20 seconds, what's the first impression? Professionality, and how do we judge other people? Stuff like this. A lot of work for me as a teacher, but I also hand over a lot of the work to the students. If the tape recorders that they're recording on requires all kinds of CDs and turning it over, or that kind of technical work, the students get to do that. But these days with tablets and smartphones, then the job has really been a lot more simplified. What else? You always have to. There's a fairness aspect as well to higher education teaching that most often is overlooked in a sense, or not at least talked about. I think teachers think about it a lot, but as I teach other teachers as well, I've noticed that the fairness aspect of grading is something that needs to be worked on. I have quite a few different reference points. The more reference points you have, i.e. The more various things you grade, the better the final grade actually reflects the student. I also give a written assessment at the end, which means that they will get comments on each of the different kind of groups of things that they've been doing. I'll also explain very particularly why they've received the grade they've gotten and what types of areas they still need to work on after the course is done. For exams, you are legally you're legally able to give people with reading and writing difficulties like extra time, or then the grade addition. I find both fairly simplistic ways of giving the student what they need. So I cater for that before in the course, and then at the end everyone actually gets more time. So everyone has the availability to sit for a longer time. And of course the students with the actual reading and writing difficulties, they do get to choose, if they want the added grade, but everyone gets the added time. I also try various things such as, everyone gets to try to wear earplugs during an exam or something that we do, or those that want to. So people get to try out, what is better for me. So they also learn. They also get to sort of provide feedback on notes and handouts and stuff like that. I've also done a fair amount of research on reading and writing difficulties, so that's kind of my field of expertise. But there's something in, what are we grading? In our listening comprehension, what are we really grading? We're also, apart from the listening comprehension, grading their ability for logical thinking, their discernment of, language levels, of course, but also word knowledge, reading skills, presence, as in, are they able to sit in a room with other people and concentrate on what someone is saying? If they're fearing it, then, another student can tap their foot or a pen or something like that, and it can become really distracting. So we're measuring a lot of things at the same time. One way I've worked with listening comprehension is that I'll have the questions up on the board, on the projector, and I'll zoom in on the question before, which means that it'll fill up, half the wall. I'll read it out loud to them. I'll also have the students, scoot their desks up towards the front. In higher education, they'll be like, huh? And you'll be like, yeah, it's okay. Just scoot together, everyone. So they'll sit really close to the screen. So people that have a tendency to have problems usually sit in the back. So I'll give those people sort of the ability to come forward. I usually save seats to the sides, so they get to put their desks up, from behind to the sides, which will make them come closer. I'll read the question. I'll also read the alternatives. I'll do that twice, and then sort of zoom in between, which means that they'll hear me saying these things and not only have to read them, which sort of levels the playing field a little at least. I have had one student say that they'd never ever received a pass grade in a listening comprehension just because of the fact that they don't have time to read the questions and the alternatives before the next one comes along. I also take a fair amount of time in between, sort of to have them answer, in part because I'm reading out loud and that's distracting as well. And so we'll have a fair bit of time for them to take on the questions. What else? Students with reading and writing difficulties usually do better with printed text, which means that anyone that wants to can come in and take the exam with the computer. I monitor that very closely. I'm an IT pedagogue as well, which means that they're not getting away with cheating on that part, I can tell you. And they won't have access to word lists and stuff like that. There are, other things to consider here, but in order not to make this tape too long, I'll just finish off by saying, by being consistent, by having a system that's fairly similar, but also very creative, you're tricking the students into learning. Also by not focusing so much on texts, but working with one and the same text. As long as it's a fairly complex one and it sort of is a longer one, you can do whatever you want with that text. You can have them practice, all types of different grammar points within that one and single text, if you choose to. And so the variation of texts, I let that come through. For instance, I'll have them read stuff on, how to be at an interview, which means that they're actually focusing more on the content, and they'll need the content in order to succeed later on in the course, which means that they'll read a lot of different texts, but they won't really realize that they're, in essence, broadening their vocabulary, practicing their grammar, and stuff like that. Within the academic courses in English that I've held, grammar and vocabulary actually only holds 10% of the final grade, which makes it really easy for me to sort of not focus on the text stuff, but more on, them producing text and them producing meaningful texts to them. So, in essence, I just want to say that, trying things out and being consistent and, having the courage to use technology in your classroom, that is kind of key to it all. And also allowing the students to use technology. If a student wants to take, pictures of your PowerPoints or keynotes, or if, they want to tape you, allow that, because in the end, it will only benefit you as a teacher. And the joy of having students recognize that you're doing something for them is also kind of immense. The last course I held, and then I can say by that time, people with various difficulties were flocking to my courses. And I guess it's a simple analogy, because if someone is listening to them without pointing them out, I choose that too. And I think that's one of the reasons that I did it for them. But towards the end of the course, I came to my office one morning and I discovered a flower on my chair, nicely wrapped and with a card. And the card said, "Thank you for also considering us in your teaching. Greetings from the anonymous academic dyslexics." Which is just the greatest compliment you could ever have. And you know, it's fairly simple actually. If you want to contact me about any of this, ask questions, or if you want more guidance on how to do this in practice, please feel free to contact me at johanna@gaudiel.fi. That is JOHANNA at GAUDIELL.fi. I'm more than happy to help you out because everything can be covered in this type of a medium. So have heart and have the courage to do more than you're just obliged to for your students. But in order of fairness, do those more things for everyone and not just the ones that are in dire need of your help. Thank you. Oh, and if you're wondering why I'm sitting outside in the freezing cold and by a river, welcome to my river. And this is just one part of catching your attention. Also used with my students. Thank you.